أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله.
Cairo, home to 15 million Egyptians. Here, as in many parts of the developing world, people are leaving the land and migrating to the city. They come in ever-increasing numbers, eager to escape the poverty of the countryside and carve out a better living. But the dream of prosperity is often elusive, and reality for most will mean living in overcrowded suburbs. In October 1992, the unthinkable happened. Cairo was rocked by an earthquake. Much of the city stood firm, but in the poorer districts, the damage was devastating. Hundreds were killed, and thousands lost their homes.
This world is full of calamities, full of disasters, full of poverty. It is more than 2/3 of the world are very poor. We should thank God that we are rich enough to support ourselves, and part of that we should contribute.
The Cairo earthquake made international headlines, and the response was immediate. But for hundreds of millions of people living in the developing world, help is much harder to find. For them, life is a continual struggle, and survival the daily routine. Aid, as a rule, comes from the wealthy countries of the West, but a surprisingly large amount of it comes from one of the smallest countries in the world, and until recently, one of the poorest. Today, Kuwait is one of the richest oil-exporting nations in the Middle East, and this modern, high-rise city is a far cry from the small trading port of 50 years before. The change has been spectacular. Guided by Islamic tradition, in the old days, people made a precarious living from fishing, trade, and pearl diving. But in 1946, a new era of undreamed-of prosperity began with the first shipment of oil. Economic growth led to rapid modernization and the aspiration to abolish poverty and illiteracy. At the same time, the Kuwaitis decided to put aside a substantial slice of their oil profits to help the poor throughout the Arab world. During the last 30 years, the Kuwait Fund for Arab Economic Development has become a major source of aid, on a scale far greater than its original ambitions. The Director General of the fund is Badr Al-Humaidi.
We are now working with around 69 countries in the world. In the Arab world, Africa, Asia, Pacific, Mediterranean, and we have just recently moved to 2 regions also. First of all, the former Soviet republics, mainly in the Central Asia, and also the Caribbean and Latin American countries. And in our planning also is to move for more countries in the Pacific Ocean. We have committed since our independence, or since the start of the Kuwait Fund, up to date, around $7 billion for these countries.
In this film, we examine projects in countries where the Kuwait Fund is at work to explore the variety of their activities. Kuwait's position at the northern end of the Arabian Gulf has meant that historically, for trade, it looked east to the Indian Ocean. After 60 years as a British protectorate, Kuwait became independent in 1961. The fund was founded in the same year. It was the brainchild of the Emir, Sheikh Abdullah al-Salem al-Sabah, and the then Minister of Finance, Sheikh Jabbar al-Ahmed al-Sabah, the present Emir of Kuwait.
When the formal fund was established in 1961, Kuwait was then a member of the Arab League. And you have to choose your own priorities. And naturally, the first priority is to the countries who are in your immediate neighborhood. And that's why it was called the Kuwait Fund for Arab Economic Development.
Kuwait's independence coincided with the end of the colonial period, when many newly emerging countries were in desperate need of help. The Suez Crisis, the Algerian Civil War, and many other conflicts were reshaping the Arab world. Kuwait was eager to establish its own identity in these troubled times, and the creation of the fund was part of the Kuwaiti bid to consolidate its position with its neighbors.
I think the rulers of Kuwait from the beginning were intelligent enough to realize that for wealth to be enjoyed, it has to be shared. And that for Kuwait to survive and to grow and to be appreciated, it has to be seen by its neighbors and by the world at large as a source of goodwill and a source of cooperation and assistance.
By 1974, with its reputation now established in the Arab world, the rise in the price of oil set the Kuwait Fund in a new and previously unforeseen direction. A tenfold increase in working capital meant that it could expand its operations into Africa, Asia, and many other parts of the world. From the beginning, the fund had cooperated with the World Bank in Washington, working closely with its president, Mr. Robert McNamara. He has vivid memories of a trip to West Africa, where he witnessed the effects of river blindness, or onchocerciasis, a disease afflicting millions of people.
It's a horrifying disease, and the worst thing about it, if I may appear to be very brutal, the worst thing about it is it doesn't kill. It doesn't kill, at least not by itself. Some commit suicide because the bites are so irritating, but many become blind. They lose their sight. And therefore I saw in these very primitive African villages, adults, males and females, being led around at the end of a stick because they weren't dead. They had to be fed. They couldn't contribute to life. It was a horrible situation.
McNamara flew across 6 countries in West Africa, and everywhere he went, the story was the same. The riverside towns and villages were deserted. Vast tracts of farmland had been abandoned. Something had to be done. One thing was certain: the remedy, whatever it was, would require a major effort and a great deal of money. He approached the Director General of the Kuwait Fund at that time, Abdulatif Al-Hamad, who presented the case to his government.
I said, look, we in Kuwait have always been committed to people. This is probably one of the best investments we can make. Not only that it will benefit individuals, not only it will change the lives of individuals and families and communities, it will also put us on the map in our cooperation with the international community to combat a disease that was devastating to the most helpless, poorest people on earth.
One million people were infected, and over 60,000 had been made completely blind. As the disease spread, entire regions were deserted. Kuwait determined to back the project, and in 1979, the battle against river blindness began. The World Bank set up the onchocerciasis control program under the leadership of Dr. Ibrahim Samba.
This disease doesn't kill directly, but it reduces the life expectancy by 15 years, which in Africa is very significant. Here the life expectancy is less than 50. Where the infection was very high, to over 60%, the village would gradually die within 15 to 20 years. 30% of the adult population, sometimes 50%, would be blind. Practically the whole village would be diseased, and the young people would run away, migrate either to the urban area or to the south. The elders that stay would die sooner than their time.
The impact was far-reaching. Young girls would never marry. Young men would be unable to work. The disease is spread by a small black fly, which infects its human prey bite by bite. One of the symptoms is leopard skin.
He's a fairly young man, as you say, but he has this infection standing for many years already.
And the pigmentation never recovers?
No, it has been there for too long. Many years of scratching, and that's the result. It may not come on a normal skin again.
The other manifestation is a nodule.
That's right. The nodules is tissue reactions resulting from the adult worms dwelling in the subcutaneous tissue. This is one of the nodules. You can see very round and moving and not painful. As you can see.
It's benign.
It is benign, yes. It can be removed. Okay. This is a typical onchocerciasis lesion to the eyes that is going to cause a definite blindness, and this is not reversible. This is fairly a young lady who is completely blind and for life.
Finding a cure might take years, but the first task was to eradicate the source of the disease, the infected black fly. The fly breeds in fast-flowing water where its larvae cling to plants. The only way to find infected eggs and larvae is to search for them by hand. In such a vast region, this is a laborious task by any standards.
It's a very small fly, but it has a high flight range. It can fly over 10, 15, 100 kilometers. But with the very strong wind, like the harmattan now, they can even fly over 100 kilometers away from their breeding sites.
At ONCO headquarters in Mali, reports from field staff pinpoint the affected rivers. For the operation to be successful, coordination between all the countries involved is essential. As long as there are black fly in West Africa, their vigilance will have to continue. Wherever a population of disease-carrying fly is discovered, it has to be destroyed. Over the past 15 years, the spraying program has largely eliminated the source of the disease. If the infection can be kept under control, helicopters will be a thing of the past. The search for a cure took years of experiment and painful treatment. The breakthrough came at last in 1979 with the development of a drug previously only used in the treatment of animals, ivermectin. Taken as a single pill, once a year, it cannot reverse the blindness, but it stops the progress of the disease in those who have it.
It's been very effective indeed. When we started, the prevalence was over 70%, and now it's very low. The community infection is less than 2%, and there is no risk of blindness at all. You could see among the children, they're well fed, clear eyes, and if you were to come here during the rainy season, you'll see green all over, and the people are happy working, and their stores are full of grain, and therefore the program has really succeeded.
We are so grateful to you for saving our lives. Please keep watching over us. May God bless you all.
It has taken 20 years for the dream of bringing life back to the rivers of West Africa to become a reality. Today, people have returned to the land and are rebuilding their lives. When the River Blindness Project began, Kuwait was new to funding and practically a third world country itself.
Kuwait Fund was not part of the developed countries, and that was the interesting point. It was the only, as I recall, the only source of funds from a developing country at that time. But they became part of it. We set up a 20-year program, $10 million a year for 20 years, and they pledged to commit their share of $10 million a year, each year for 20 years. And it was remarkable. They provided a leadership that was badly needed to stimulate interests of others.
50 years ago, before oil was discovered, life for the Kuwaiti people was harsh. The country was so poor in natural resources that they even had to import fresh water by sea. Their meager wealth came from trade, the herding of livestock, and a pearling industry that was already in decline.
It was really a tough time. It is very difficult for one to have enough to eat. This is the life, you see. Houses are mostly of mud or nothing of this life. One cannot even imagine how we survived living that life. But it was so. They collect the rainwater, but that is not enough. And in the summer, they dig wells. The means of living was very difficult.
Before oil was discovered, this country depended very much on the ingenuity and the hard-working ethics of its people. They were pearl divers, and that was very risky, difficult, harsh life to lead. And they were traders, mariners, if you like. They traded with the subcontinent of India, they traded with Eastern Africa. And once you have that orientation of having to look at the sea, having to work with other people, this forms a personality where you have to adjust to other cultures and other people, where you have to have an openness of mind for new ideas, for new concepts, for ideologies that are different from yours.
For more than 200 years, trade has taken Kuwaitis to the ports of the Indian Ocean, and they're no strangers to the coast of East Africa. Zimbabwe, in East Africa, could scarcely be more different from the Middle East, blessed by reserves of water and plenty of fertile land. Cecil Rhodes believed that Rhodesia, as Zimbabwe used to be known, would form the heart of a great white African empire. History proved him wrong. In the 1970s, a vicious war of liberation pitted the black population against the white rulers. Thousands were killed, and many more fled to the bush to avoid persecution and conflict. Peace came in 1980, but for the refugees, the struggle to survive was far from over.
The government was aware, that there was an immediate need to resettle people who had been displaced during the war. Now, obviously, a lot of money would be needed, which the independent government did not have. And a number of countries started to make offers of assistance, and that included Kuwait.
In a country torn apart by civil war, it was essential to rebuild the social structure and the rural economy. To resettle homeless families, the Copper Queen project was established. Many of the people here have farmed all their lives, but always as hired labor. Even before Copper Queen was set up, some of the land had been taken over by refugees who had no legal rights.
When we became independent in 1980, we got just the rumor about this area. We thought it was quite easy to come here. We came here to squatter. And since after that, when the government thought of resetting this area, we were about to be chased back to Shurugwi. There was a lot of noise at start, and we thought this was going to be something like a jail where you were going to work here getting nothing.
To their surprise, the squatters were given the right to stay and set up farms. Today, Mr. Kabida works his own land for the first time. He has to work very hard, but the rewards are his own.
And at the moment, I feel very rich because I'm having what I never had before. And I'm pleased to see people driving cars coming to see what I'm doing.
319. When all else fails, cotton keeps the farmers going. It's a hardy crop, and despite a prolonged drought, Copper Queen is flourishing. Tradition is maintained. Each family can keep 3 head of cattle, and these are communally grazed in the surrounding forests. Many of the older generation are illiterate, but their children will have the chance to reach university. Clinics provide health care.
To those people who were settled in Copper Queen, definitely the scheme has brought upon a tremendous change for the better in the living conditions of the people.
The success of Copper Queen is cause for celebration. Today, prizes are awarded to the best farmers. Once without hope, they now have a stake in their own destiny. Would Mr. Kabida have had a future without this project?
No. And if the idea of the settlement wasn't formed, then I think I would have been being a child with my father. Otherwise, being poor, because when you live with your father, you are counted as a labor.
There's little point in Mr. Kabida growing cotton if he can't get it to market. For a landlocked nation like Zimbabwe, the railways are vital. Yet after the war, the antiquated system lay in ruins.
The economy of this country almost entirely relies on the national railways of Zimbabwe. And I mean almost entirely. It is the second largest employer in the country, second to government. We had a multiplicity of locomotive classes arising from the pre-independence era when the country was under UDI. And most of the skilled personnel were leaving the country. So we got to a stage where we had no personnel, we had no locomotives to rely on, and yet we had traffic to move. It was then that Kuwait came in to come and assist us in the procurement of 61 diesel-electric locomotives.
The Kuwait Fund considered the options and advised on buying the most suitable locomotives. Today, the system is working well. Zimbabwe now performs a vital role for her neighbours, opening up the freight corridors from the African interior to the seaports of the Indian Ocean. Now the farmers of Copper Queen can reach markets all over the world. Kuwait has always tried to foster good relations regardless of politics. When Mao Zedong died, few countries were more out of step with the world than communist China. When China first began to look for external aid, surprisingly, it turned to Kuwait.
Kuwait has had a very good relationship, working relationship, trading relationship with China over a number of decades. And I recall the Chinese ambassador coming to see me on and off until he finally shyly approached me. And I asked him, said, why do you want to have a fund? Why is the biggest country in the world seeking a loan from a very small country and an institution such as the Kuwait Fund? He said, because we trust you. This way we can learn the process of dealing with others. And that's why we wanted the first loan, so we can understand the mechanisms. So when we go to others, we are in a much better position to understand the processes. And it's interesting to point out that the first development loan ever granted to modern-day China was granted by the Kuwait Fund. And this is, a historical first.
One of the first things the Kuwaitis did was to fund a new airport at Xiamen City. Xiamen is a busy seaport in southern China, but for years the poor relation of Hong Kong and Taiwan. Today in China, there is a new climate of economic freedom, and cities like Xiamen are finding their feet.
The building of Xiamen Airport has had a very good effect on trade for us. Now we can deal directly with Hong Kong, and it's much easier for us to trade with Taiwan.
The airport was originally planned to handle 10 flights a day. Within 2 years of opening, business was booming. Work on expanding the airport had to begin far sooner than planned. For a country this large, mobility is essential for its future growth. The city of Xiamen designed and built its own airport, but bought equipment from around the world. A Kuwait loan is unusual in that it comes with no strings attached.
I think one of the advantages of the Kuwait Fund loans is that it's anti-loans, which means that the recipient countries, they don't have to buy goods or services from Kuwait in order to benefit from the Kuwait Fund loans. They can have an international bidding, so they can choose the best know-how, the best technology with the lowest price.
It was the pioneering activities of the Kuwaitis which helped bring the Chinese into contact with Western know-how. This hydroelectric dam at Shakiku in the north of Fujian province generates power for the expanding local industry. In this instance, the Kuwait Fund brought in British consultants, which proved a learning process for both sides.
Suddenly, through our letterbox, one morning about 6 years ago, we were invited to put in a proposal to provide a team of experts to work with the Chinese in advising them on the design and the construction of this project. It was interesting in that at first the Chinese didn't really understand what we were supposed to be doing. The whole concept of consulting engineers, in fact the whole concept of paying for services, is somewhat foreign to the Chinese. But I'm very happy to say that over a period of years we really developed a very good relationship, and I am among the first to admire the Chinese for their energy and the drive with which they can undertake major projects.
Loans like these are laying the foundations of China's economic revival. Without American aid after the Second World War, neither Europe nor Japan would be what they are today.
The prosperity of Western Europe would not have been triggered without the Marshall Aid, without the generosity of the Americans immediately after the Second World War. The reconstruction of Europe was critical for the prosperity of Europe. We very often forget that Japan was one of the earliest borrowers of the World Bank. Today, Japan is one of the richest countries and is the largest donor to the World Bank. So you could see that the whole relationship has changed. In helping these countries come out of their underdevelopment, we're really helping ourselves in the 21st centuries to reduce the number of poor countries, to expand world trade, to expand resources that can flow to the benefit of all mankind.
The duty to give to the poor is an ancient tradition that lies at the very heart of Islamic belief.
In Islam, first, a Muslim is under the obligation. There is no choice. It's under the obligation to give 2.5% of his wealth per year to the needy. This is called zakat. It's one of the 5 pillars of Islam. You find the same traditions in Christianity, in Judaism, but in Islam it has been so institutionalized that it became part of Islamic law, part of being a Muslim. You cannot be a Muslim without that.
That is the aim of the politicians of Kuwait. We help for the sake of help. God, great, has given us enough. We should share part of that. We are not giving it all, but we should share. And this is the duty of everyone.
It was the sharing and clever management of water which laid the foundations for the great civilizations of the Arab world. Traditional ingenuity has not been lost by modern Egyptian farmers. Mr. Hajj still makes use of an ancient machine. In Egypt today, 70 million people are crammed into 4% of the country along the River Nile. and in order to feed the growing population, scarce water brings life to the desert. In the North Sinai, a massive irrigation project, co-financed by the Kuwait Fund, is bringing 500,000 acres into cultivation. Mr. Hajj is one of thousands who have moved here from the overcrowded delta to turn the desert green. From the beginning, the Kuwait Fund has continued to operate throughout the Arab world. The ancient Syrian city of Damascus is over 3,000 years old, but in the last 30 years, the population has increased fourfold. For centuries, the Barada River provided its inhabitants with fresh water, but today it is little more than an open sewer. With the help of the Kuwait Fund, the Syrians are replumbing their capital in one of the largest civil engineering projects ever undertaken in the Middle East. Over 160 kilometers of pipe is being threaded beneath the crowded streets. "30 kilometers outside Damascus, the Adra treatment works is taking shape. Here the city's sewage will be processed and the water recycled. From the days of its foundation, the Kuwait Fund reacted to obvious needs. In many places, the building of vital infrastructure was an essential first step to raising standards of living.
The big emphasis at that point was that developing countries lacked the basic infrastructure, and that if you wanted them to develop without the basic roads, dams, and irrigation schemes in place, it was very difficult to do anything at all in development. And it was because of that the Kuwait Fund then began to concentrate on infrastructure and hired in experts from almost every country in the Arab world.
Built in a region of almost continual drought, the Manantali Dam in Mali, West Africa, was part of a massive project to harness the power of the Senegal River. The lake it has created will provide drinking water and open up more drought-stricken land to cultivation. Within 2 years, the dam will generate electricity for 3 African countries. Infrastructure projects can be relatively small, and even something as modest as a dirt road can make a difference to people's lives. The old trading centre of Kédougou in East Senegal was once vital to the flow of commerce from 3 countries, but a broken road meant that it has fallen on hard times over the past 30 years. To help revive Kédougou's fortunes, the Kuwait Fund has helped rebuild the road, linking the town with the outside world.
With the road, I can now bring my goods in from Dakar more easily. Before, the trucks had to travel in convoy. It was very expensive.
Well, obviously the road will be good for my business. There will be a lot more traffic. They'll all need petrol from my garage.
I drove here for the first time today. Before they started the road, I wouldn't have dared risk my car. It was too dangerous.
The people of Kédougou are pinning all their hopes on the new road. But there is a price attached to progress. In Africa, development often means damage to wildlife Here, the road is cutting through Senegal's largest national park. Tunnels and shallow gradients have been constructed to enable animals to avoid the speeding traffic. But not everyone is happy.
C'est mon sentiment en tant que technicien.
It's my feeling as a professional that I would have preferred there to have been more parallel funding for measures to compensate for the disturbance to wildlife that the road will create. The other problem is the question of speed of traffic. Animals will be killed, collisions will occur, accidents will happen.
Il va sans dire que construire une route comme celle-là à travers
It goes without saying that constructing a road like this through the national park of Nyokole-Koba was a gamble that has paid off.
qui vient de se réaliser. Aussi ses effets
Also its effects on the economic life of the department, in particular the town of Kédougou, has been very positive.
Sûrement positif.
After they'd won independence, many developing countries embarked on their own industrial revolutions, frequently with financial help from Western powers and the USSR. Much of the old infrastructure is now obsolete, and in some countries, the Kuwait Fund is helping to patch it up. Here, the rolling process at an Egyptian steel mill is being modernized with computers. For aid to be effective, it must adapt to changing times.
I think one of the principles, we do have it in the fund, that we are a flexible organization, adapting our own policy and rules according to the environment and the requirements of the developing countries. The requirement of these countries in the 60s, 70s, and the 80s, differs from the requirement in the 90s.
The Maldive Islands are scattered across the tropical seas to the southwest of India. For the small Muslim population, fishing has always been the economic staple. They are by no means poor, but their way of life could easily be wrecked by insensitive development.
There is much greater emphasis today on the human being. There's much greater emphasis today on the individual. There is much greater emphasis on creating an environment for a healthy, viable, productive, prosperous human being.
दिल में चुराई देखो ना जी कहले तो फूल नजारो है मीठा मीठा ये जहां.
In the Maldives, most people continue to make a living from the sea. But they are no longer cut off from the outside world. Tourism has arrived. And change has come to the fishing industry too. For centuries, the fishermen went after tuna in sailboats. Then, in the 1970s, some boat owners replaced their sails with motors. This uneven modernization left many fishermen behind, and the government decided to intervene.
The Kuwait Fund came in the early 80s to assist the government to develop the industry further. And one of the things that happened was the construction of a second generation dhoni, which is a traditional hull, but deck space has been improved. Engines have since then increased its capacity. And this has certainly made it possible for the fishermen to move out further and therefore increase their catching area.
In many tropical regions, unscrupulous modern fishing methods have killed thousands of dolphins and turtles. But in the Maldives, they continue to thrive.
Today, the question of dolphin and the safety of mammals is quite a big issue, and we are concerned about it. And the pollen line method is the best form of conservation. It does not involve sweeping the bottom of our seas. This method of fishing assures the consumer that no mammal is harmed by the fish that is caught here.
Even though the fishermen do not use nets, the tuna catch has more than doubled. This increase has warranted the construction of 2 freezer vessels, provided with Kuwaiti aid, which collect tuna from the pole and line fishermen. In the old days, the fishermen sold direct to foreign fleets who dictated the price. With the freezer vessels, the Maldives are now able to process the fish and sell at their own price, substantially increasing revenues. These idyllic islands attract many tourists, and help was also needed to build an airport capable of handling large jets. However, tourism is unpredictable, susceptible to changing fashions and economic upheavals. The government sees fishing as the mainstay of the economy.
Fishing has always been the backbone of our economy, and I believe it will remain so. In terms of earnings, sometimes tourism pays more, but in terms of employment, in terms of continuity, I would think fishing would remain the most important economic activity for the people in the islands.
In Sri Lanka's Mahaweli Basin, irrigation is transforming the landscape. Today there is a marked shift of emphasis from urban to rural development. In the past, many governments in the poor world neglected the countryside, preferring to spend money on over-ambitious industrial programs. The result was an ever-increasing flood of immigrants into the crowded city slums. Investing in the countryside helps in 2 ways. It keeps people on the land, which is good for social stability, and it helps countries like Sri Lanka to maintain a healthy food supply. The education of future generations is seen as the key to prosperity, both here in Sri Lanka and in many other places where the Kuwait Fund is active. But recently, like many fund operations, the future of the Mahaweli project was suddenly put in danger. The invasion of Kuwait by Iraq in 1990 was a tragedy as unexpected as it was devastating. For 7 months, the future of Kuwait was uncertain. As the world took stock, the Kuwaitis came to realize that there was to be a surprising return from the operations of the fund.
Well, the fact that we're sitting now today in Kuwait, in 1993, talking about independent Kuwait, talking about the Kuwait Fund, is an indication of the dividends which Kuwait was able to collect from all its long-term investment that it made throughout the world.
While the United Nations deliberated on a course of action, it became apparent that thanks to Kuwait's long-term investments in the underprivileged parts of the world, many recipient countries were eager to pledge their support. This eased the way for the United Nations to take positive action.
Most countries were just outraged by the invasion of Kuwait and took a stand in principle that this was a wrong that has to be reversed. Naturally, the record of Kuwait and the assistance provided by the Kuwait Fund made it much easier for countries to take a strong position in favor of Kuwait.
In September 1990, which was just a month after the invasion, we had a barrage of ministers wanting to see at that time Sheikh Ali Khalifa, who was Minister of Finance, not only to support Kuwait, but they were asking questions. We want to pay our money which we owe you. When do we pay back? And I think that was I felt it was a tremendous response. You could feel that the aid that we had given not only had an impact, but was something which was highly appreciated.
When we went to Washington, D.C. during the IMF World Bank meeting in 1990, 50 finance ministers and Minister of Economy from all the African countries, they met with our finance minister and they gave their support for Kuwait. A lot of these countries, the only relation exists between them and Kuwait is the Kuwait Fund operations.
The survival of the fund was important to many countries. The Kuwait Fund in exile set up in London, and within weeks of the invasion, it was business as usual.
To the developing countries in Africa, Asia, and some other parts of the world. Kuwait Fund is the oldest national development agency.
Today, Kuwait Fund staff spend much of their time in the world's major capitals, in constant touch with experts from all fields of development. Aid requirements are forever changing. The types of project and the forms they take are constantly evolving to particular needs. With such a widespread commitment to aid financing, to be effective, it is essential to keep up with new discoveries in science and technology.
It's been a very well managed fund. It's grown today to something on the order of $7 billion, and it's grown because, and it's been effective in its growth because it's had this absolutely outstanding leadership. It's a dynamic leadership. It's a tough leadership. They set very, very high standards for the performance of their people, and they set very, very high standards for countries to be eligible for their financial assistance. And they demand that the countries pursue the programs they finance according to the objectives that they and the countries agreed to initially. So it's a very, very well-run organization.
Kuwait is still in the process of recovery, and the scars of war have yet to heal entirely. The task of reconstruction has cost a fortune, and national reserves have been greatly reduced by the expense of liberation. Some Kuwaitis question the wisdom of spending so much money on aid.
Since 1986, the Kuwait Fund is a self-financing institution. We have our own resources, we have our own capital, on which we depend for any future commitment of the Kuwait Fund. We have now our old loans repaying back, we have our investment, which is a main source of our income. On these two sources, we are depending for our future expansion and our future commitment.
Within 18 months of Kuwait's liberation, the earthquake struck in Cairo. Even though Kuwait was still coming to terms with its own tragedy, it was able to act quickly and decisively in Egypt.
These are the bricks falling down, and these are the cracks down the wall. I was frightened. I didn't want to go back to school.
The back wall had fallen down and there were cracks all over the ceiling.
The horrors of the earthquake remain vividly etched in the minds of the children. This school is one of several which has risen out of the ruins in a Cairo suburb, one of the poorest parts of the city.
The new school is very good. We have lots of room and a big playground. We thank the people of Kuwait.
It was the gift of Kuwait that enabled over 30 new schools to be built throughout Egypt in the 8 months following the earthquake. Over 12,000 children were reschooled. We live in uncertain times. As world population grows, the fabric of whole societies remains threatened by poverty, ignorance, and lack of basic human needs. It is essential for wealthy nations to assist the poor. Prosperity brings more than just material wealth. It creates a world of opportunity and hope.
In today's world community, nobody can survive totally isolated from influences of others. It's to the interest of world community at large, and especially those countries that can afford it, to try to support development in these other countries, because they are really part of this whole world community, which is in the final analysis a ship. I may be on a different floor from you, on a different deck from you, but should the ship sink, it's just a question of a few minutes or a few hours difference. The result is inevitable. We all go under.